Well, it's a real pleasure and a privilege to be standing in front of you today to talk about something that I am super passionate about, and that is women and girls getting into STEM. It's an absolute passion of mine. So over the next 20 minutes or so, I'm just going to share some of the work that we're doing and some of my own thoughts about how we get girls interested in STEM. So what I'm going to cover over the next 20 minutes or so is why we, as RB, are interested in getting girls into STEM, understanding some of the barriers that are already there that turn these girls away from STEM. I think we've already heard quite a lot of barriers this morning. I did enjoy that People Like Me session. I thought it was incredibly relevant. And also, having sort of like seen some of these barriers, just throwing out some ideas on how we can break these barriers down and actually change perceptions and make STEM attractive, how we can motivate and inspire our girls to take careers up in STEM. Right, now a bit of a health warning for the next couple of slides. This is not a plug for the company I work for, but it's just to set the context. So first of all, who's heard of RB? Fantastic. Some of the people who work for RB, good, I'm glad you have. I've spent the last 16 years of my career hearing RB who. This should explain who we are. So we are a fast-moving consumer goods company, and as you can see, how many of you use our products? That's better. So basically, this is a picture of our 19 what we call power brands. So we have brands across health. You'll see things like Strepsils and Nurofen and Durex. And hygiene, we've got Dettol there, and home, of course, Airwick. So very well-known brands. And as a company, just a little bit more information about the company. We're a big company, 36,000 employees. 10 billion pounds of revenue this year, and we're in the FTSE 20 now. The statistic that I absolutely love on this slide is we sell 20 million products a day, and that's about 7 billion products a year. So that's a lot of products, a lot of toilet cleaners, a lot of condoms. So that's what we do. And also, like any good company, we have a purpose. And our purpose is to make a difference by giving people innovative solutions for healthier lives and happier homes. And it's this purpose that that when I get up in the morning, I seriously think about this purpose. Those products that I showed earlier on the earlier slide really do make a difference, make the lives of our general consumers healthier and happier. And I'm very proud to work for a company with this purpose. So what do I do? Well, as was said in the introduction, I'm the Senior Vice President, Head of Global R&D. So global R&D, Global Research and Development for RB, it's a quite big organisation, 1,400 of us, 28 locations, 28 labs around the world. And basically what we do, we cover everything from the initial idea all the way through chemistry, through formulation, analytical chemistry, packaging devices, mechanical engineering, regulatory, medical sciences, all the way through on the journey from idea all the way to the shelves and supporting it in market beyond. So the array of science disciplines that we cover in R&D is massive. Lots of different STEM functions and also a lot of STEM opportunities. Science and technology is fundamental to a company like RB. If we weren't good at it, we'd have none of those products to put on the shelves. So fundamentally, science and technology is right at the core of us as a company, which is why I feel very passionately about it. So, why do we care about girls in STEM, and I think I've told you why. Science is the enabler of RB innovation. No R&D, no business. I keep telling them that. R&D for me is the most important function in our company. And of course, really, really key statistic on that second point. 85% of our consumers are women, and in fact, over 80% of our purchasers are women. And when it comes to areas like over-the-counter medicine, that goes up to 93%. So massive influence. So it's imperative that you've got that female view when you're developing these products. The third point there, women in business equals success and profits. And I'm sure you're all aware of some fantastic reports that are coming out. Basically, just to summarize, the more women you have at the top of companies, the better the commercial results. And there's a lot of data on that just emerging. I think McKinsey's did a mapping. It was just a... They mapped, if you managed to get gender parity at the top of every big corporation, you would increase output by 25%. That's amazing. And I think corporations really need to pay heed to those kind of figures. The other thing as well is, and I'm sure again you've seen the stats on startups, and female-headed startups are doing better than male-headed startups. And I don't know if any of you are familiar with internet sites like Indiegogo, Kickstarter. They all house little startup companies. And what they find is that projects that could put on these sites that are headed by women, A, get more hits, more supporters, but they get on average 12% more funding for these little startup projects. And of course, we're always on the lookout for new, fresh talent. Ask you a question here. What do nappies, windshield wipers, and coffee filters have in common?
Designed by a woman.
Correct. Well done, you. Yes, absolutely. And so women are designing things that are successful and that we use, right? And I saw a fantastic little invention a little while ago, and it was just a little gadget that fitted into your smartphone that could actually diagnose ear infections. Again, designed and innovated by a woman. So that's why we care about women in STEM. So what are the barriers? Right? We all know that there are barriers that turn these girls away from STEM. And I'm just going to cover just 4 of them very briefly. Now, the first one, lack of basic confidence. Now, it's a real shame, but girls just aren't as confident about their ability in STEM. And I don't really know why, but I remember, when I was writing this talk, I was looking at my own experience as a woman in science and what motivated me or what didn't motivate me. And I remember growing up as a child and hearing things like, oh yeah, engineering, maths, physics, they're boy things. And then the girls do history, art, English. And I do remember that vividly. And that is still out there. I think what has changed is that, we're not actively discouraged these days from doing sciences, but I'm sure that we could be doing much more to encourage actively our girls to do science. Is this lack of confidence based on anything substantive? Well, actually quite the opposite, because now, if you look at the performance of girls in school and the STEM subjects, they're doing better than the boys. So where's this lack of confidence coming from? Gender stereotypes. I did a little straw poll around the office before I came here, and I asked people to name scientists in the public eye, right? And I had the usual culprits. I got Tim Peake there, Brian Cox, David Attenborough. Nobody came up with a female scientist, which was a real shame. Can any of you name any female scientists that are in the public eye? Right. Anybody else? Yeah, but you should be able to name some. Anyway, anybody watch The Big Bang Theory? Yeah, I'm a huge Big Bang Theory fan. And for those of you who don't watch it, it's an American sitcom. And there are 7 main characters, 3 girls, 4 boys. And here are the women in the show, right? 2 of these are scientists, and 1 isn't. The 2 are scientists, the 2 that are wearing glasses there. There's Amy and Bernadette. They're both really quirky, nerdy scientists. And then on the right-hand side, you've got Penny, who's pretty and quirky, and an aspiring actress. Although she has actually become a medical rep in the last series. The other 4 characters, the male characters, they're also scientists. They're really nerdy, geeky. But funnily enough, Bernadette and Amy are biologists. And the 4 boys are physicists and engineers. It was only when I was putting this together that I suddenly kind of made that connection. And again, that bias is out there. Because physics, of course, is a real challenge. There was a study recently looking at co-ed schools, a cohort of co-ed schools, and 50% of these schools had no girls doing A-level physics. No girls. So you imagine being that first girl to raise her hand in one of those schools and saying, I'm going to do physics at A-level. It takes quite a lot of guts and quite a lot of courage to do that. So, the third one here, a bit contentious, but is the national science curriculum failing? This is something I feel quite strongly about. I remember going from primary school to secondary school, and the thing that I was most excited about was doing science. Right? There was a lot of talk about doing science at in secondary school. And biology, because you got to dissect and you saw a lot of frogs' legs twitching. Physics, because you got to play with mercury. That was long before health and safety. It was a long time before, long time back. And chemistry, of course, because you got test tubes and a Bunsen burner. And it was cool, right? And I remember starting school, and yes, that's what it was. It was the single sciences. I still remember Tuesdays was triple physics, and then Fridays was triple chemistry. And I thought it was fantastic. I thought it was great, and it was part of that thing about making that transition from primary school to secondary school. So I have to admit, I don't know why we went to a double, triple kind of system, but we know that the research shows that students doing the single, triple sciences, they are far more likely to continue science at a higher level than those doing double or now additional sciences. And there's also some other, I guess, stigma associated with that additional double science piece as well, because again, in a recent survey, kids themselves say, oh, it's only the brainy kids that do triple. And it's nice to see that the latest data from Ofsted is that the separate sciences, the entries for the separate sciences are actually increasing, while the entry to the additional science is decreasing. So personally, I think we should go back to those single sciences and cherish them because they're different. And actually, in the US, it's worse. I lived in the US for 5 years, and I've got 2 children, and my daughter spent 3 years in an American high school. And you start when you're 14 as a freshman. And in US high school, you do 1 science per year. So freshman, she did physics. So when she was a sophomore, she did chemistry. And I remember being at a parents' evening and asking the teachers, why do you do this? Why do you just do this 1 science per year? And the answer was, because they're too hard. and again, it's that bias, and you're already introducing that concept that science is too hard. Careers advice. Right, are some of you familiar with the Aspire study from King's College? Yeah? Aspires is a study, it's a very long-term study where thousands of pupils are being mapped, basically. They're being charted from the age of 10, now all the way through to the age of 18, charting their progress, their feelings, and where they are in terms of STEM subjects and how they evolve from the age of 10 through to 18. And what the Aspires study is telling us, that a lot of younger people, you know, when at 10, you've got very good ideas about what you think about science. In fact, when they question 10 and 11-year-olds, they get some really interesting stats. 70% of them think, yeah, science can lead to really good careers, scientists make a difference, and in fact, I think over 60% of them say science leads to careers where you make a lot of money. I wish. So thoughts and, you know, their thoughts at that age are positive, right? But what's missing at this point is actual tangible careers advice. I remember at this age, you know, thinking science meant being a doctor, right? And careers education in my school was you did the sciences, you were a doctor, you did the arts, you were a lawyer. And that was the extent of it. And I think the key thing here, they're forming their opinions, they're thinking science is good. That's when we need to be talking to them about careers in science and what kind of stepping stone careers in science, where they can go. So, but as you all know, they don't get too much careers advice at this age. So, we've spoken about some of the barriers. So how can we break these barriers down? How can we get our girls really interested in science? I'm just going to talk a little bit about some outreach work that we're doing. I mentioned we've got 28 labs around the world. Well, the biggest research and development lab we have at RB is in Hull, in the north of England. It's a very big facility. In fact, we're building a new centre of excellence for health in Hull, and there are about 700 research and development people there. And I'm very lucky that we have some very motivated and committed young female scientists, and I'm smiling at one of them over there, who are as passionate as I am about spreading the word about careers in science to young girls. And we work directly with a school in Hull. It's Newlands Girls' School in the centre of Hull. It's in the centre of Hull. It's not really an affluent area. And basically, a group of girls and graduates from RB have reached out to this school and have started working with these girls to try them to turn them on to science. And so before I came today, some of the girls went to Newlands and actually did a survey just to get some attitudes. So we basically surveyed 144 of the pupils at Newlands across the years 7, 9 and 11. And basically what we wanted to get was their top of mind thoughts about what they thought about science. And interestingly enough, it more or less mirrors the Aspires research. So year 11, we've kind of lost them because basically it's not their favourite subject. In fact, it comes second only to maths. Year 9, it's their least favourite subject. Year 7, they love it. They really like it. And for a lot of them, science was their favourite subject. So year 7, get them when they're young. That's what this tells me. So as you've seen, a lot of them didn't like science. Why? 60%, well, nearly 70% found it boring, 60% found it difficult, and 22% didn't think it would be useful to the careers that they wanted to pursue. And again, we need to be educating them at this point on where careers in science can take them, what doors careers in science can open for them. We also asked them what would make science more interesting to study. So if you go to the bottom of this chart here, across all age groups, more practical lessons was mentioned. Girls are very good at the practical lessons, right? Girls are generally better at dissection and things like this. And girls also like getting really immersed, the visual piece, really hands-on stuff. More interesting lesson. I'm not quite sure what interesting means, but certainly the year 11 students wanted interesting. If you go to the top there, careers talks from people working in science-related jobs. And I think we've had some real positive feedback from Newlands, from the girls from RB going in and talking to these girls. Right? They have really interesting perceptions on who is a scientist. And I think our girls are helping bust that myth. So again, careers talks, the right career talks early on. And also, what they all said, and you can see here, opportunities for them to visit companies that do science, right? I think this practical hands-on, go in, open your doors, let these kids come in and look what science can lead to. I think it makes a real difference, and I think we should be doing more of this. And then science as a career. So a third of these students believed that science would lead to well-paid jobs. But it's that chart on the right that is so depressing. Nearly 70% of them are not considering a career in science. And that's across year 7, year 9, and year 11, and it's consistent. And that, for me, is really depressing, and we need to do something about it. I asked the girls to sneak this question in, right? Because I was intrigued, because I think the work that we're doing is great. And I wanted to know who your female role models were, right? Who do you think? Who do you think they said? Pardon? Victoria Beckham. Michelle Obama. Lady Gaga. Okay. Somebody said Beyonce. Yeah, good. Because I'd asked my daughter this question as well. I've got my daughter's 20, and she's doing politics at Durham, and I was hoping she wouldn't come up with a Kardashian, and she did. And she came up with Angela Merkel, which I thought was quite a good answer, actually. But this is what the girls gave us. Selena Gomez. You know, I'm a bit of a Bieber fan, I have to admit, but, you know, she's just come out of rehab. We've got 2 Kardashians, Jenners on the right-hand side there. Beyonce, awesome woman, actually, quite powerful. And Jessica Ennis, good role model. Ellie Simmons, and a lot of them said, my mother. Right? Oh. Yeah. So that's basically what they had as their female role models. Are you surprised? So, just to finish, I think you've got an indication of how passionate I am about this subject. We have to get our girls into science, right? It makes good economic sense, and they can have such rich careers in science as well. So, just to finish, but we do need to bust some of these myths. Bias no longer exists. It does exist. There was this great observational study that was done quite recently, and it was observing science classes, practical science classes. And what the observers found was, it was a chemistry class, and if the boys were having a problem doing the practical, they put their hands up and said, "Sir, I'm having a problem." And the teacher would explain to them what they had to do, and the boys would do it, right? So the girls would say, "Sir, I've got a problem." And the teacher would go, "Oh, it's all right, I'll do it." And I remember that happening to me in a science practical class. We've got to stop that kind of stuff. Stereotypes don't have an impact. Well, of course they do. And I think Rebecca, we did pictures at Newlands where we basically said, pick who you think from these pictures are scientists. And it was 50-year-old male that they generally picked. And it has been wonderful, actually. Rebecca is one of the girls here who goes into Newlands and does this work. And when they see people who are like Rebecca, they know it's people like them who can be scientists, you know. The other myth, girls have to sink or swim. There are things that we can do when girls are failing in science, like recent studies showing that giving them mentors, allowing them to work with partners, it does have an impact. And there's an interesting stat as well, because, well, it's a personal behaviour thing, I think. Girls, when they get Bs in science, feel it's a catastrophe. I'm not good at it. It's only a B. I'm going to ditch this subject because I'm not good at it. Boys, on the other hand, if they get a C, think, that's okay, it's all right, and they don't drop out. And basically, having a boy and a girl, yeah, I can see that behaviour. And then the myth. What I say doesn't matter. It does matter. I, at school, for A-level, I started off doing maths, biology, physics, chemistry at A-level. I did maths for 2 weeks. There was only me and one other girl doing maths. And I don't know what happened, but after 2 weeks, I told myself I couldn't do maths. And I dropped maths. And as I've mentioned, I've got 2 children, and they're 17 and 20 now. And throughout their scholastic careers, I've always helped them with their homework. And I've always said, Mum's better than Dad. I can do the science and I can do the arts. But don't give me the maths. That's Dad's. And when I was thinking about this talk, I thought about what I'd been saying all throughout the kids' scholastic careers. And I called my daughter up and I said, sorry, Liv, because she's been saying she's rubbish at maths. And I said, it's my fault. You know, this is a girl who got an A star at economics A-level. She's not rubbish at maths, but she says she's rubbish at maths. So it was my fault. So think about what you say to your children, because it does have an impact. Anyway, I've seen the stop sign. So thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak about a subject that I'm so passionate about. And it's great to hear what's going on with WISE and people like me. And it's fantastic that we really are putting this effort into understanding what it is that will inspire and motivate girls to pursue careers in STEM. So, thank you.